Greetings and salutations, viewers. Welcome to another episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to you today with another episode of Cursed Sight. Last time round, we were still in the woods with our newfound friends. We got to learn a little bit more about them, and we left things off with hopefully a revelation, or at least some form of useful information to help forward the plot. So how about we dive back in and see where things go from here. It really is you. Zouluu covered her lips with both hands. My brother, Guy. So it is the sister. Did Zouluu just call me brother? Perhaps this should be the moment where I wept and embraced my long-lost sister under the sunset. Well, first, the sun had gone to sleep hours ago. Second, I knew better than to accept her words that easily. Neek gave Zouluu a nod before stepping out of the tent. The one time when I wanted him around, he had to act all considerate and leave us alone. I could have sworn someone had vacuumed all the air out of this tent. Mother and father were the first victims of my cursed sight. Once Westaria understood my powers, the temple took me in. How did she pick them up? Zouluu's history matched Mion's almost word for word. More important, her story mirrored what had supposedly happened to my sister. If my sister still lived, she would indeed be around Zouluu's age. Zouluu squeezed her dress as if a mosquito had flown inside. The cursed sight affected my health when I was a baby. Mother and father sold you to cover the medical costs. Huh. That meant selling me had nothing to do with the holiday or whatever else I had assumed. My parents could have just told me. Did they keep me in the dark, fearing I would hate my sister? Zouluu dropped onto her hands and knees. I've destroyed your life, brother. If you want to stab me right here, I'll have no complaints. That seems excessive. Half of me yearned for a reunion, while the other voiced 100 suspicions. I felt as if hands were pulling me from either side, threatening to tear me in two. Zouluu reached towards me, and I retreated until my back hit the wall. I need some time to think this through. With that, I flipped the tent flap open and fled into the forest. If Zouluu had followed me out, I might have started running. I crawled back into my tent and found Mion already asleep inside. She snored in her sleep as always, but I never told her, as she might respond by impaling a pineapple between my eyes. That would be painful. I sat cross-legged in the corner and buried my face inside my hands. What made Zouluu suspect I was her brother in the first place? She must have pieced the puzzle together when Mion told her things about me. I had been so determined to spite anyone involved with Sasa's death. Zouluu's personality already made it hard enough for anyone to hate her, and now she claimed to be my sister as well? The news only brought back memories I had tried so hard to bury. Zouluu felt responsible for what happened to me as a child. Now I knew why she loathed herself so much. It must have been gnawing at her all this time, yet I still wished she had never told me. Our first step together as potential siblings, and I had already fallen flat on my face. Someone put a hand on my shoulder. I uncovered my face to see Mion kneeling before me, her nose close enough to touch mine. After a decade together, I no longer feared being near Mion and her cursed sight. In recent years, what made my heart pound was the fact that she was a girl. Tonight, with my mind bursting with uncertainty, those feelings never registered. "Guy, everything okay?" Mion asked. "Great. Way to disturb everyone's night, Guy." I tried to give Mion a summary so she could return to sleep, but as I talked, all of my thoughts came pouring out. There's no way I can suddenly start treating Zouluu like my sister. It's barely been 2 weeks. Mion nodded and kept silent so I could ramble on. I'm still shaking over what happened to Sasa. You know, I keep seeing her corpse in my sleep. Mion looped her arms around me. Her warmth melted my shell of toughness and my voice started to crack. "Damn it, sorry. Now you'll be thinking about it too." Mion tightened her embrace, letting her hair drape across my shoulder. "Sorry. Stop being silly and tell me all of your problems." Mion spoke in the same tone Sasa used to put on whenever I threw a tantrum. I thought the war would force me to grow up, but please, just for this evening, let me remember how fun it felt to act spoiled. Mion released her embrace and took a seat on the grass beside me. After locking our fingers together, we exchanged stories of the nightmares that had been plaguing our sleep. Perhaps I should be struck by lightning for this, but it relieved me to learn that Mion's heart had been scarred as badly as mine. I treasured every ordeal we shared, no matter good or bad. If a pair of bees stung us, I might even keep the needles for souvenir. Transition! Long transition. To the next morning. The next morning, I visited the pond to find Zouluu apologizing at a fish she had scooped up. With a heart like hers, I doubted she would ever make much of a hunter. Mion had followed me out of the tent, but as I approached the pond, she stopped trailing in my steps. I actually wanted to cling to her sleeve like a kindergartner, but it looked like she had decided to let me resolve this with my own strength. Good morning, Guy. Zouluu stepped out of the pond with water dripping from the tips of her waist-length hair. You know, when Mom and Dad sold me to East Taria, I really hated them. But thinking back, I met some pretty okay people in the temple. I peered over my shoulder and shot Mion only a glance to avoid blushing too much. Though a portion of my heart still wanted me to hate Zouluu, I vanquished the thought and barely managed to smile. I'm still breathing anyhow, so stop hating yourself and start living freely. Zouluu stood speechless with her shoulders hunched. It must have really confused her. Despite spending the entire night coming up with the coolest speech ever, once Zouluu stood before me, my words came slurring out like a baby vomiting food. Eventually, Zouluu's lips curled into a smile. She jumped in and threw her arms around me. Brother! Brother! Zouluu, being a baby when we separated, had zero recollection of me, yet she still gave her best effort in this reunion. I played my part in return by running my fingers through her hair. If you expect me to start calling Zouluu sister, try calling a stranger your uncle and see how weird that felt. For now, I just wanted to look after Zouluu as a friend, because, boy, did she need looking after sometimes. I glanced over my shoulder again to see Mion smiling with both hands cupped over her chest. Did I say the right thing? I wanted to ask Mion and see if she might give me a lollipop. Well, if I had failed in her eyes, she probably would have already drowned a dead rabbit, or thrown a dead rabbit at me. The sound of advancing footsteps put me on alert. I let go of Zouluu and turned to find Neek dashing up to us. Let me guess, we have company. Yep. Eastarian soldiers, Neek said, panting. I saw them in the forest, heading our way. I knew this day would come. In fact, I should be grateful it took this long. But now that the soldiers were upon us, I wanted to write a hate mail with Locke's name on the envelope. For a while, I thought the king had grown a heart and decided to set us free. What a laugh. The only thing he had grown was a beard, I bet. Zouluu started running in the direction of our camp. Neek called at her to stop before I could. Forget about the camp. That's the first place those soldiers will tear apart. Your comics, Zouluu said. You put your heart into them. Come on! Neek grabbed Zouluu's hand and hauled her in the opposite direction. After trading nods, Mion and I trailed them. The four of us sprinted along the forest with no destination in sight. I gave my best effort to keep running and ignore my scorching lungs. If I were alone, I might have surrendered, but with Mion here to share my fate, I would crawl and eat dirt if it came down to that. A minute later, Zouluu dropped onto her knees and gasped for breath. Neek stopped in his tracks to stroke her back, but he too had sweat seeping out of his pores. Mion also gave up on running and had both hands cupped over her knees. Her skin looked so pale I fear she might throw up. I pressed one hand against a tree trunk for support, wheezing for air as if worried the others might inhale them all, leaving none for me. Once my breathing settled, I heard the footfalls of armored boots in the distance. Every second we wasted would allow those soldiers to close the gap. Our camp, no doubt, would have been discovered by now. Those tents would confirm our presence to the guards. We could never afford to sleep in this forest again, let alone set up another post. With Neek's help, Zouluu climbed back onto her feet. My legs are cramping up. Run back on your own while you still can, Neek, Zouluu said in a commanding tone that matched her about as well as Locke matched honey and flowers. What? Neek shook his head. Even if I returned to Westaria now, I'd be branded a traitor. Go to another village then, Zouluu covered her mouth, probably realizing this was the worst time possible to shout. She clenched her fist and started to convulse. No town would ever welcome someone with powers like mine. You need to go alone. Neek extended a quivering hand towards Zouluu. But I've sworn to stay with you until the end. Zouluu swung her arm to keep Neek away. Stay with me and be killed by Eastarian soldiers? I gave you an order, Neek. Zouluu, please. Get away from here! Uh-oh. Biting his lip, Neek ran off like he had been told. Tears streamed down Zoulu's cheeks as she watched him go. I don't like where this is going. Thank you, Neek. I've troubled you for long enough. With no one left to offer her a handkerchief, Zouluu had to settle for wiping the tears from her with her sleeves. Those soldiers must have received orders to take Mion alive, and Zouluu would prove just as valuable to the king. As for killing me, well, the guards might feel more remorse stepping on a snail. Mion turned her head in my direction, perhaps wanting to send me off after Neek. I shook my head before she could speak. Don't even think about it. If I wanted to leave you behind, I would have done so a long time ago. Oh, Guy, you silly thing. That's odd, Mion said. It's just a matter of time before we get caught. What should we do? Wait, like 9 episodes in and all of a sudden we have a choice? Keep hiding or stop hiding? Well, if we keep hiding, they're going to get closer. Unless we're in a really good spot, they're going to find us. If we stop hiding, what does that mean? Does that mean we surrender? Or does that mean that we run and try for it? Oh, geez. Let's try stop hiding. That is not what I wanted to choose. We're out of time, I said. You might hate me for saying this, but you need to go back. What? Mion opened her mouth as if wanting to argue, yet no words came out. This felt no different from handcuffing a loved one and sending her back into prison, but I must follow through, as further resistance might put us all at risk. A dozen soldiers emerged from behind the trees. They sprinted in our direction like they had found their prizes in a game show. I wanted to start running again just to see their beer guts sweat. The guards formed a circle around us, and the one with the most badges on his shoulder blade stepped forward. You're coming home, Mion. I put a hand out in front of Mion, but she pulled it back and shook her head. To the guards, it probably looked about as intimidating as a grasshopper wearing boxing gloves. Another soldier rubbed his chin as he looked at Zouluu. What's the treasure of Westaria doing here? Third soldier sneered. Bringing her head to the king would earn us a nice holiday bonus. The commanding soldier smacked his underling across the head. Fool! She is much more valuable to us alive. Zouluu hid behind me as the guard extended his hand towards her. Sorry, sister, but I stood no chance against these soldiers. You would have better luck mimicking a wolf's cry and seeing if some of them might rock up to your aid. Odd terminology, but okay. The guard grabbed a handful of my shirt and tossed me aside like a food wrapper. Just as he began to coil his fingers around Zoulu's hand, a figure leaped out from behind a tree. The soldier sprang back and unsheathed his blade. Okay, is this going to end? He's really outnumbered. I don't think this is going to end well. Tears streaked down Zoulu's face as Neek stepped in between her and the commanding guard. You can always count on me, Neek said, peering over his shoulder at Zouluu. My word is gold. Well, that's about to be collected, because I have a feeling you are not going to make it through this episode. The guard snickered as Neek pulled out his sword with trembling hands. His legs jittered so much I thought he might start an earthquake. Rather than putting on a deep voice to sound cool, Neek stayed true to himself for once. Right now, he looked brave enough to take on anything, perhaps even those baby birds he feared so much. The commanding guard brandished his blade. Go home before you cut yourself, kid. With a yelp, Neek struck his sword at the soldier. The two blades clashed, causing the guard to stumble back. Either the goddesses had smiled upon Neek or he actually knew something about combat. Whatever the case, there might be hope for us after all. Oh no. That dream vanished when a second guard snuck in and slashed Neek across the back, spilling his blood all over the grass. "Neek! Neek!" Zouluu screamed as Neek crumpled into a pool of his own blood. I covered her veil despite knowing it was too late. Zouluu tried to break free of my hold, but with the guards ready to take her hostage, I held her back even if she might curse me for it. I stared at Neek's body, praying to spot at least an inch of motion. His body no longer heaved to draw a breath. My knees buckled as I knew beyond doubt that I was looking at a corpse. One by one, the guards shifted their eyes toward me. The commander spoke on their behalf. "It's you who caused all this trouble. There's no need to wait for a sentence. We'll cut you down here and now." Well, this could have gone better. Those words sapped away my strength, causing me to lose grip of Zouluu. She jumped in front of me and spread out her arms as if trying to scare the guards away. At that moment, my heart accepted her as my one and only sister. It just came a little too late. What would happen if either of these two women lifted their veil and just cursed the lot of them? I pulled Zouluu back and squeezed my eyes shut. "There you go, there's your opening." At least let me act like an older brother in my final moments. By telling Mion to return, I had already signed my death sentence. "Enough!" Mion cried. Everyone, including guards, spun to face her. She had been so quiet that I thought she might have snuck away during the commotion. Uh-oh. Mion picked up Neek's blood-soaked blade and pointed its tip at her throat. "If you hurt him, I'll kill myself right here. Try explaining that to King Locke." The guards gathered to discuss this matter. After a brief exchange, the commander sheathed his blade. "Have it your way." Mion dropped the sword and hurried over to me. Zouluu, meanwhile, collapsed onto her knees beside Neek's corpse. "Come with us. I'll make sure they keep you safe," Mion said, but Zouluu shook her head. When I offered Zouluu a hand, she shook her head again, this time more vigorously. "We're going back to East Taria," Mion said to the guards. "If any of you touch Zouluu, I'll take off this veil and doom you all with my curse." Why not do it anyway? That threat made even the guards shudder. I was in no mood to rub it in their faces, though. In all these years, not once had I seen Mion use her powers to scare others. It must have pained her to have broken that record. Muttering under his breath, the commander strutted off with his henchmen in tow. Our lives had been spared for now, at least. As Mion and I followed, I glanced back at Zouluu, who remained on her knees at Neek's side. The wolves might snatch her for dinner if she stayed here, but that could be merciful compared to whatever schemes Locke had plotted for her. I considered dragging Zouluu with us just so I could keep her by my side like a pet. Some kind of brother I was. I should be the last person to steal away her long overdue freedom. In the end, I left Zouluu be and trailed the guards back to East Taria. Please, sister, do everything in your power to survive. So, the guards just killed a dude, left the corpse, had the treasure of Westaria in their grasp, and let it be. Just walked away. There's no way this is going to end well for the guards if Locke learns about this. Because they should have done whatever was in their power to get both Cursed Sight people rather than let one walk away. Especially one who affects theirs so effectively. This is not going to end well. Most of the lanterns that lit Melody Way had been sliced apart, leaving the village in darkness. I should be grateful, as these shadows spared me from having to see the corpses strewn about town. Too bad that stench of decay still burned my nostrils. The guards ahead lit torches to illuminate the path before them. One of the soldiers gazed back at Mion. East Taria's in this shape because you ran off. I hope you're pleased with yourself. It might just be the torchlight playing tricks, but I thought the guard's eyes flared as he said those words. A man doing his day job to pay the bills could never look this fierce. Perhaps he had lost a loved one to the war. I almost forgot, these guards had families too. Though Mion said nothing to the guard, I saw her hands tremoring. She stared at her shoes as they shuffled along, as if ashamed she had been a bad slave to her people. The villagers muttered to one another while we strode past. Their feet barely left the ground as they walked, making them look more like ghosts than people. I recalled that time when some brats hurled rocks at Mion, but tonight, nobody even said a word to her. We returned into our prison at last. Unlike Melody Way, the temple seemed unfazed by this war. Big surprise that Locke would care for himself before his people. If Sasa was alive, we would at least have one reunion to look forward to. Without her, I almost regretted not provoking those soldiers into cutting me apart like fish fillet. We trailed the guards up to the entrance of Mion's room. After throwing the doors open, the commander shoved Mion inside, forcing her onto her knees. Oh boy. I squirmed past the guards to try and reach Mion, but one of them pinned me by the arm. The king wants to have a word with you. And I think we're going to leave things there, because that seems like a good transition point. So, we just lost Neek. And within one episode, we found our sister and then left her in the woods to her own devices. 'Cause, you know, that's really the way to go. I'm kind of regretting the whole decision now of stop hiding. I didn't realize that's what that would entail. I thought it meant kept running or something. If it's a matter of hide or give yourself up, I'm wondering what the keep hiding option would have been. Might have to go back and look into that in another episode. But in the meantime, we're going to wrap things up here for this week. So hit that subscribe button so you can check out all the future episodes and go take a look at all the previous episodes of Game Break and shenanigans that our group gets up to. And until next time, as always, go be creative. Go play some video games, go enjoy other people's stories, go create your own stories and then share them with others, and above all, have fun. And we will see you all next time.